The needle burned going in, hotter than it should have been, and I knew immediately something was wrong. The Velkhari nurse standing over my medbay table had 6 arms, and 3 of them were trembling. Her compound eyes, normally a calm amber, flashed red at the edges. She stepped back fast, too fast, her chitinous plating clicking against the metal cart behind her. "What did you just give me?" I asked, sitting up despite the restraints across my chest. "Standard procedure for interspecies medicine. Humans metabolize things differently. Everyone knew that." She didn't answer. Her translator Chip remained silent. Instead, she looked toward the door, mandibles twitching in what I'd learned meant distress. The burning spread from my shoulder down through my chest, a heat that felt like molten copper threading through my veins. My vision blurred, doubled, then sharpened to a clarity I'd never experienced. I could see individual dust particles suspended in the air, catch the microscopic vibrations of the station's hull far beyond what human senses should detect. "Nurse Cathrala," I said, reading her designation badge with eyes that suddenly made the small text appear enormous. "What was in that syringe?" She backed toward the exit, her smaller secondary arms clutching at her uniform. The door slid open, and she vanished into the corridor without a word. My restraints popped open. I hadn't touched them. My hands moved on instinct, faster than thought, and the magnetic lock simply gave way. I stood, and the room tilted, but not from dizziness, from strength. I could feel the station's artificial gravity like a physical weight I could shrug off if I wanted to. The medical bay's main door opened again. 3 Velkhari security officers entered, their ceremonial armor polished to a mirror shine. Royal Guard. That explained nothing and everything. Royal Guards didn't come to Medbase for humans getting routine vaccinations for station protocols. The lead guard, designation marks indicating the rank of Shield Prime, approached with measured steps. Her movements held the stillness of deep water, calm but ready to drown anything that disturbed it. "Ambassador Reeves," she said, using my official title, though I was just a junior diplomatic attaché, "you will accompany us. No resistance. No questions. Your safety is paramount." My safety? The burning had settled into a constant hum beneath my skin, like standing too close to a power conduit. I was just injected with something that's making me feel like I could tear this station apart with my bare hands. "What happened?" "No questions," Shield Prime repeated. Her voice remained level, but 2 of her 4 hands moved to the pulse lances at her sides. "Not threatening. Prepared." I let them escort me out. The corridors of the Velkhari diplomatic station stretched before us, curving upward in the gentle spiral architecture their species favored. Normally, I found it disorienting. Now, I could map the entire route in my head, understanding the 3-dimensional space like I designed it myself. We passed other species heading to their quarters or assignments, a cluster of Mytharian traders with their crystalline skin refracting the overhead lights, 2 Grell diplomats arguing in their musical language about trade tariffs. None of them looked at us. That was wrong. Royal Guards attracted attention anywhere they went. Their armor was meant to be seen. But everyone we passed found urgent reasons to examine their datapads or study the walls. The burning intensified. My fingertips tingled, and when I glanced down, I saw faint traces of luminescence beneath my skin, following my veins like a road map drawn in cold fire. "I need medical attention," I said, keeping my voice steady despite my heart hammering against my ribs. "You are receiving it," Shield Prime said, "from the only physician who can help you now." It descended, which surprised me. The important facilities stayed in the upper rings, where gravity remained Earth normal for visiting species. Down meant the deep core, where Velkhari gravity increased to nearly double what I was used to. The doors opened onto a corridor I'd never seen before. The walls here weren't the polished composite of the public areas. These were older, carved from the asteroid itself, rough stone that predated the station's construction. Emergency lighting cast everything in amber shadows. At the corridor's end stood a door marked with symbols I couldn't read, but somehow understood.
"Royal Vault."
"Medical sanctum. Forbidden to all but bloodline and those they chose to save." Shield Prime pressed her primary hand against the lock. It recognized her and opened with a hiss of equalized pressure. Inside, the chamber held equipment I recognized. Medical scanners, synthesis bays, emergency stasis pods. But everything was sized for Velkhari physiology. And, standing at the central console, her crown dim in the low light, was Queen Velshara herself. She turned as we entered. Her compound eyes held a weariness that transcended species, the exhaustion of someone who'd made a choice that would cost her everything. "Ambassador Reeves," she said, her voice carrying the harmonic undertones that marked Velkhari royalty. I apologize for the deception and for what comes next. The door sealed behind us with a finality that sounded like a tomb closing. My hands blazed with that cold fire, and I realized with perfect, terrible clarity that whatever had been in that injection wasn't meant to harm me. It was meant to change me, and that change had already begun. Queen Velishar approached, moving with the careful grace of someone approaching a bomb they'd armed themselves. 3 hours ago, Nurse Cuthrala was supposed to inject you with standard inoculation serum 773. Instead, she administered compound 904. Do you understand what that means? No, I said, though part of me did. The part that was burning. The part that could feel the station's superstructure groaning around us, sense the positions of every living thing within 100 meters, taste the recycled air and identify its component gases by instinct. 904 is a catalyst agent, the Queen said. It was developed centuries ago when my people first began exploring worlds beyond our own. We needed to understand other species, truly understand them, to avoid the wars that had nearly destroyed us. The compound allows temporary genetic plasticity. The recipient's body begins incorporating beneficial traits from nearby organisms, adapting, evolving in real time to match their environment and needs. She paused, her smaller arms folding across her thorax in what I'd learned was a gesture of regret. The process is agonizing and irreversible. And if we don't stabilize you within the next 4 hours, your body will continue adapting until your original genetic code is completely overwritten. You'll cease being human entirely. The cold fire under my skin pulsed in time with my heartbeat. I looked at my hands again and saw that the glow had intensified, spreading up my forearms in delicate traceries that matched no human circulatory system. Why would your nurse have access to something like that? I asked. The Queen's silence stretched too long. Shield Prime shifted her stance, a minute adjustment that suggested discomfort. She shouldn't have, Queen Velshara finally said. 904 was locked in royal vaults, its existence classified at the highest levels. Only 3 individuals in the entire Velkhari Concord knew where it was stored, and I am one of them. Someone gave it to her, I said. The burning sharpened my mind alongside my senses, and the pattern became obvious. Someone with royal access. Someone who wanted to see what would happen if a human was exposed to your evolutionary catalyst. The Queen's eyes darkened to a brown so deep it approached black. Yes. Someone committed an act of war against your species by using you as an experimental subject. And that someone did it from within my own government, with my own security clearances. If Earth discovers this, they will demand retribution. The alliance we've spent decades building will shatter. Millions could die in the resulting conflict. She moved to the medical console, her multiple hands dancing across controls with desperate precision. I have 2 choices, Ambassador Reeves. I can report this incident through proper diplomatic channels, provide all evidence, and let the investigation proceed as law demands. Your government will receive a full accounting. Justice will be served, and war will almost certainly follow. Or, my voice came out rougher than before, the burning reaching my throat now. Or I stabilize you here, in secret, using royal medical protocols that technically violate 17 interstellar treaties. I find whoever did this quietly and deal with them according to Velkhari crown law. And I ask you to trust me, a foreign monarch whose government just poisoned you, to handle this internally and keep it buried. The medical scanner beside me chimed urgently. My body temperature had risen 3 degrees in the last minute. The genetic restructuring was accelerating. If you choose the first path, Queen Velshara continued, I cannot guarantee your survival. The diplomatic process will take days we don't have. If you choose the second, I save your life. But you become complicit in a cover-up that undermines everything your species believes about transparency and accountability. The Queen offers you this choice knowing you could destroy her with a single transmission to your embassy. She trusts you with her crown and the peace between our peoples. That is not a small thing. I felt my consciousness expanding, fragmenting into pieces that each understood the universe differently. Part of me could sense electromagnetic fields now. The station's power grid a brilliant network of light only I could see. Another part understood the chemical composition of the air with perfect clarity, identified the stress pheromones the Queen was releasing despite her controlled exterior. I was becoming something new, something between human and whatever the catalyst decided I needed to be. What happens if you stabilize me? I asked. What will I be when it's done? 904 was never tested on humans. Our species share carbon-based biochemistry, but your evolutionary path diverged from ours millions of years ago. The catalyst will try to optimize you for survival, incorporating traits from nearby genetic templates. primarily Valkyrie, since we're the dominant species on this station. But the end result is unpredictable. My hands clenched, and I felt the station's hull plates flex somewhere far above us, responding to forces that shouldn't exist. I was already becoming something more than human, whether I wanted it or not. "How long do I have to decide?" I asked. The medical scanner chimed again, more urgently. Queen Velsara glanced at it, and her eyes flashed genuine fear. "Minutes," she said. "Perhaps less. Ambassador Reeves, I need your answer now." The cold fire consumed me completely, and I made my choice in the space between heartbeats, knowing that whatever came next would change everything I'd ever known about who and what I was. The burning reached my brain, and the universe exploded into 1,000 new spectrums of light and sound and sense, and I screamed into that transformation with every cell that remembered being human, while the thing I was becoming roared with hunger for more. Queen Velsara moved before I finished speaking, her hands flying across the medical console with desperate speed. "Shield Prime. Full containment protocols. If he loses cohesion before I can stabilize the cascade, we'll have a runaway adaptive event. This entire sector could be compromised." The walls shimmered, and I realized they weren't walls at all. Energy barriers, powerful enough to contain a reactor breach, snapped into place around us. We were in a cage within a cage, and I was the thing they were trying to keep from spreading. The transformation hurt in ways I had no words for. My bones lengthened, shortened, twisted into new configurations as the catalyst searched for optimal structure. My vision fractured into compound facets, then reformed into something sharper than either human or Valkyrie sight. I could see heat signatures, electromagnetic patterns, the faint distortions of gravity itself. "Fight it," the Queen commanded, injecting something into my neck with a device that looked like a miniature plasma torch. The injection site seared, but the new pain gave me something to focus on. "Your human neurological patterns need to remain dominant, or you'll lose yourself entirely. Think human thoughts. Remember human memories. Hold on to who you are." But what did it mean to think human thoughts when my brain was restructuring itself by the second? I reached for memories. My mother's face, Earth's yellow sun, the smell of rain on concrete, and found them dissolving like sugar in water, still there but transformed into something I experienced differently now. "His genetic markers are stabilizing," Shield Prime reported, reading instruments I couldn't see, "but the integration is exceeding predicted parameters. Your Majesty, he's not just incorporating Valkyrie traits. The catalyst is pulling from everything in range. The trace biologics in the air, the bacterial cultures in the medical bay, even the modified algae in the station's environmental systems. 904 was designed with species-specific limiters. It shouldn't... not wings, not exactly. Sensory organs, feathered with microscopic cilia that tasted the air and electromagnetic spectrum simultaneously. They retracted almost immediately, my body deciding they weren't optimal for station environments, but the fact that they'd formed at all meant the transformation was out of control. The Queen worked faster, her multiple hands a blur of precise motion as she mixed compounds I couldn't identify. The human genome is more adaptable than we anticipated. Their evolutionary history includes multiple periods of rapid environmental change. The catalyst is treating that adaptability as permission to experiment. She injected me again, this time in the chest, directly over my heart. My cardiovascular system seized, stopped, then restarted with a rhythm that sounded like drums and bells combined. Multiple chambers now, maybe 5 or 6, pumping blood, if it was still blood, through vessels that had reorganized themselves into more efficient patterns. "Talk to me, Ambassador," the Queen demanded. "Tell me something only a human would know. Prove you're still in there." I opened my mouth, and the sound that emerged was harmonic, layered, like 3 voices speaking in perfect unison. But the words were mine. "The first thing I saw when I arrived at this station was you, standing in the docking bay with your crown dimmed in respect for the human delegation. You wore it low because you'd researched our customs and knew we associated humility with power. That observation isn't in any official record. Only someone who was there, who noticed, who cared about the gesture, would remember it." The Queen's eyes brightened slightly. "Good. You're still you. The integration is severe, but your consciousness remains intact. That gives us a chance." She pulled a device from a secured cabinet, something ancient and ornate that looked more like a religious artifact than medical equipment. Carved from a single piece of dark crystal, it pulsed with its own internal light. "This is a genetic anchor," she explained, moving toward me with the reverence of someone handling a holy relic. "My people developed it in conjunction with 904, a failsafe to prevent exactly what's happening to you. It will lock your genetic code at its current state, preventing further transformation. But, Ambassador, understand what that means. You will never be fully human again. What you are right now, this moment, is what you'll remain forever. The burning had spread everywhere, into places I hadn't known could burn. My perception of time had changed. I experienced each second as a small eternity, my accelerated nervous system processing reality faster than my old human brain ever could. Will I be able to go home? I asked. To Earth? Queen Velshara hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. Your enhanced metabolism will require environmental conditions similar to this station. Earth's atmosphere, gravity, and electromagnetic environment would be difficult for you. Not immediately fatal, but chronically damaging. You would need constant medical support to survive there. Not legal exile, not punishment, just the simple physical reality that I no longer belong to my own world. Do it, I said. Lock the anchor. Stop the transformation. She pressed the crystal device to my chest directly over my altered heart. It sank into my skin like a stone dropping into still water, and I felt it merge with my cellular structure, integrating at the molecular level. The burning stopped. The silence that followed was absolute, and in that silence, I felt the full weight of what I'd become. My body had stabilized into something that was no longer human, but not quite Velkhari either. A hybrid. An evolutionary experiment that had succeeded in the worst possible way. I looked down at my hands. They appeared human mostly, but the bones beneath the skin had restructured. Stronger, denser, with joints that bent in directions they hadn't before, my nails had thickened into something between keratin and chitin, not claws but not fingernails either. The containment barriers dropped, and Shield Prime approached cautiously, scanning me with a handheld device. Stable, she reported. All adaptive processes have ceased. Genetic structure locked. He's viable. Viable? I repeated, tasting the word with a tongue that now had twice as many taste receptors as before. That's one way to describe it. Queen Velishara deactivated the medical console, her movements slower now, exhausted. Ambassador Reeves, I need you to understand something. What was done to you was an act of profound evil. Someone in my government, someone I trusted, weaponized our most dangerous technology against an ally. They did it to destabilize the peace between our species, to create exactly the crisis we're now trying to prevent. Why? I asked. What do they gain from war between Earth and the Velkhari Concord? That's the question I intend to answer, the Queen said grimly. But first, I need to know whether you're still willing to accept my original offer. To let me handle this quietly, through Crown law, while keeping your transformation classified. Or whether you'll demand the transparency your species deserves, even knowing the cost. I stood, testing my new body's balance and strength. Everything felt different. Better in some ways, wrong in others. I was faster now, could process information with crystalline clarity, sense the world through channels humans had never evolved to access. But I'd paid for these enhancements with my humanity itself. If I report this, I said slowly, working through the implications, Earth's government will demand immediate action. They'll want the conspirators identified, extradited, tried in human courts. The Velkhari Concord will refuse on sovereignty grounds. Diplomatic relations will collapse within days. Trade agreements, technology exchanges, the Joint Defense Pact, all of it gone. Yes, the Queen confirmed. And elements on both sides who want conflict will use the crisis to push for military responses. We've been allies for barely a generation. That's not long enough for trust to survive a betrayal this severe. Shield Prime remained silent, but her stance shifted subtly. She was watching me with an intensity that suggested she had orders beyond simple protection. If I became a threat to Velkhari's security, she would act without hesitation. What exactly does Crown law mean in this context? I asked. What are you proposing to do? Queen Velshara met my gaze directly, her compound eyes steady. I will personally investigate every member of my government with access to royal vaults. The conspirators will be identified through methods that are thorough. When I find them, they will face trial under ancient codes that predate our alliance with humanity. The penalties for treason and unauthorized bioweapon deployment are severe.
They will not survive their sentences. Death? I asked.
Worse, she said quietly. Genetic dissolution.
We will unmake them at the molecular level, scatter their component atoms into the void. No monuments, no descendants, no trace that they ever existed. It is the highest punishment our law allows, reserved for crimes against the crown and species itself. I absorbed that, considering the weight of what she was offering. Justice, but delivered by foreign laws I didn't fully understand, executed in ways that would horrify human rights advocates back on Earth. And what happens to me? I asked. Do I just disappear? Return to duty pretending I'm still human and hope nobody notices? The Queen's smaller arms folded in that gesture of regret again. You cannot return to normal diplomatic service. Your transformation is too obvious to anyone with medical training. But I can offer you something else. A position within my personal household as an advisor on human Velkari integration. You would have unprecedented access to both governments, the ability to shape policy from within to prevent future disasters. You would be a bridge between our species in ways no one else could be. A gilded cage, I said, under your direct control, where you can monitor me and ensure I never become a liability. Yes, she admitted without shame. I won't insult you with comforting lies, Ambassador. You are a security risk now, through no fault of your own. But you're also a unique opportunity. A human who understands Velkari biology from the inside, who can perceive the universe through both sets of senses. That perspective is invaluable. I would pay dearly to keep it within my service. I walked to the far wall of the medical chamber, examining my reflection in the polished metal surface. The face looking back at me was mine, but changed in subtle ways. My eyes held flecks of amber now, and my skin had taken on a faint iridescence in certain lights. Still recognizably human, but marked by transformation. What about Nurse Cathrala? I asked. Was she a willing participant in this conspiracy or a pawn? We found her body 2 hours ago in a service corridor near the medical bay. Cause of death was genetic collapse, identical to the effects of 904 overdose. She'd been dead for approximately 90 minutes when she administered your injection. Someone else was wearing her body, used some kind of genetic mimicry to impersonate her, gave me the injection, then discarded her form like a used tool. Yes, the Queen confirmed, which means our conspirator has access to technology that shouldn't exist outside of deep classified military research. Adaptive camouflage at the genetic level is theoretically possible, but no one has successfully weaponized it. Or so I believed until today. The pieces assembled themselves in my enhanced mind, patterns emerging from chaos. They used Cathrala's body to implicate the medical staff, to make this look like negligence rather than intentional sabotage. When the investigation began, you were supposed to find evidence of improper vault security, systemic failures in your government. Earth would demand accountability, you'd be forced to prosecute your own people, and the alliance would fracture from internal pressure. But they didn't account for the Queen's willingness to break her own laws to contain the crisis, Shield Prime added. Or for your survival with consciousness intact. You were supposed to die or transform into something mindless. A tragedy that would unite both species in grief while planting seeds of distrust that would bloom later. I turned back to face them, my new senses picking up micro-expressions and biological signals that painted a complete picture of their emotional states. The Queen was terrified, not of me but of failure. Shield Prime was calculating odds, running through combat scenarios in case I went rogue. Both of them were exhausted, pushed beyond their limits by a crisis that should have destroyed everything they'd built. If I agree to your proposal, I said carefully, I need guarantees. Real ones, enforced by more than just your word. Name them, the Queen said immediately. First, I want full access to the investigation, not summaries or reports. I see everything you see, examine every piece of evidence, participate in every interrogation. If I'm going to be complicit in hiding this, I need to know the truth firsthand. Granted. Shield Prime will integrate you into her investigation team immediately.
Oh!
Second, I want regular communication with Earth. Encrypted private channels that you don't monitor. I'll lie to my government about what happened here, but I won't be cut off from my own species entirely. I need to maintain those connections or I'll lose myself. The Queen hesitated, then inclined her head. Agreed, but with limitations. You cannot discuss your transformation or this incident through those channels. Other topics remain unrestricted. Third, I continued, feeling my way through the negotiation with instincts that were part human intuition and part something else entirely. If you fail to identify the conspirators within 1 standard year, or if I determine your investigation is being sabotaged or blocked, I reserve the right to break silence and report everything. This isn't a permanent cover-up. It's a conditional agreement based on your ability to deliver justice. The Queen's eyes darkened, but she nodded slowly. 1 year. That's reasonable. If I cannot root out this cancer in that time, then I've failed anyway, and you should expose that failure. Do you have additional conditions? Just one more, I said. "When you find them. Not if, when. I want to be there. I want to look them in the eyes and understand why they did this. Why they thought destroying the peace was worth using me as a weapon." "That can be arranged," the Queen said quietly. "Though I warn you, Ambassador, the truth may be more disturbing than you expect. Motivations for such acts are rarely simple hatred or greed. Often they believe themselves righteous." I extended my hand, human custom that my transformed body still remembered. The Queen regarded it for a moment, then wrapped one of her primary hands around mine in a grip that acknowledged both our partnership and the fragility of what we were attempting. "Then we have an agreement," I said. "I'll become your bridge between species, your advisor on human affairs, and your silent accomplice in this cover-up. In exchange, you'll hunt the people who did this with every resource at your disposal, and you'll give me the truth when you find it. Shield Prime, begin integration protocols for Ambassador Reeves. I want him fully briefed on our investigation within the hour. And find me whoever accessed Royal Vault 773 in the last week. Start with my own family if necessary. No one is exempt." Shield Prime saluted with all four arms, a gesture of absolute commitment. "It will be done, Your Majesty. Ambassador Reeves, if you'll follow me, we'll begin your orientation to Crown security protocols." As I moved to follow her, the Queen spoke once more, her voice carrying a weight that transcended her words. "Ambassador, I want you to know something. When I offered you this choice, I genuinely didn't know which option you'd take. I hoped you would trust me, but I prepared for the possibility that you wouldn't. That makes your decision to accept my proposal far more meaningful than if I'd coerced you into silence. You're choosing to believe in peace, even when you've been given every reason not to. That kind of faith is rare. Don't let me prove it was misplaced." I looked back at her. This alien queen who'd gambled her crown and potentially her life on my willingness to be complicit in her scheme. "If you betray this trust, Your Majesty, what I've become will be the least of your problems. I know things about human psychology and Velkhari biology now that make me uniquely dangerous to both our species. Make sure the people you're hunting understand that. Whoever did this to me didn't create a victim. They created a witness. And eventually, a judge." The threat hung in the air between us, acknowledged but not rejected. Then I turned and followed Shield Prime out of the medical chamber, leaving the Queen alone with the weight of her choices and the knowledge that she'd bound herself to a human who was no longer entirely human, in a gamble that would either preserve the peace or destroy it completely. The investigation began immediately. Shield Prime led me through corridors I'd never known existed, deep into the station's core where Valkyrie Crown security maintained operations invisible to ordinary residents. The war room she brought me to was a marvel of integrated technology, with holographic displays showing real-time surveillance of every critical system on the station. "This is where we coordinate Crown protection and strategic intelligence," she explained, her professional demeanor never wavering despite the strangeness of briefing a transformed human on classified Velkhari security protocols. "Normally, you would never be permitted here. Your presence represents either the Queen's greatest act of trust or her most desperate gamble. I haven't decided which yet." "Neither have I admitted, studying the displays with eyes that could now process information faster than any human computer. I saw patterns in the data streams, correlations, and anomalies that would have taken teams of analysts days to identify." "Who had access to Vault 773? Shield Prime activated a display showing security logs. 4 individuals? Queen Valashara herself, obviously. Crown Princess Telmara, the Queen's designated heir. Royal Physician Shorath, who maintains medical stockpiles for the royal family. And Minister of Science Kevroth, who oversees all classified research projects." "A small pool," I observed. "That should make investigation easier. Unless one of them is sufficiently clever to have covered their tracks," Shield Prime countered. "Or unless they had help from someone with the technical expertise to circumvent our security systems entirely. The genetic mimicry technology alone represents a breakthrough that should have taken decades to achieve. Whoever deployed it had resources beyond what any individual, even a royal, should possess." I moved closer to the security logs, my enhanced perception picking up details that would have been invisible before. These timestamps. The vault was accessed 3 times in the week before my injection. Once by the Queen, reviewing inventory for budgetary purposes. Once by Royal Physician Shorath, retrieving compounds for the Crown Princess's medical treatments. And once by an automated system maintenance protocol that runs every 48 hours. "Correct," Shield Prime confirmed. "The automated access is routine, logged and monitored by By Minister Kevroth's department, I finished. Science Ministry oversees all station systems, including security automation. If someone wanted to access the vault without leaving obvious traces, they could potentially mask their entry as automated maintenance. Shield Prime's eyes brightened with what I'd learned to recognize as approval. The Queen chose well. Your hybrid perception is already proving valuable. Most humans would miss the significance of that maintenance window. Most humans aren't desperate to understand why they were turned into an experiment, I said grimly. Show me Kevroth's recent activities, communications, travel logs, research projects, everything. She pulled up the minister's files, and we spent the next 2 hours dissecting every detail of his professional and personal life. Kevroth was old by Valkyrie standards, nearly 2 centuries, with a distinguished career in exotic materials research. His current project portfolio included 17 different initiatives, from improved hull plating to more efficient power generation. Nothing obviously connected to genetic research or bioweapon development. He's either innocent or very good at compartmentalizing his work, Shield Prime concluded. I'll need to interview him directly, examine his private laboratories. That will take time and discretion. What about the Crown Princess? I asked. Royal Physician Shorath accessed the vault to retrieve compounds for her treatments. What medical condition requires materials stored in a maximum security vault? Shield Prime's demeanor shifted, becoming guarded. That information is protected by royal medical privacy protocols. I cannot share it without the Queen's explicit permission. Then get her permission, I insisted. If someone used the princess's medical needs as cover for accessing Vault 773, that's directly relevant to our investigation. Your Majesty, Ambassador Reeves requests information regarding Crown Princess Telmara's medical condition. He believes it may be relevant to identifying how the vault was compromised. The Queen's voice came through immediately, strained with fatigue. Tell him. At this point, Ambassador Reeves knows enough of our secrets that one more won't matter. Shield Prime deactivated the channel and turned back to me. Crown Princess Telmara suffers from genetic degradation syndrome, a hereditary condition that affects approximately 2% of Valkyrie royalty. Her DNA is slowly deteriorating at the cellular level, causing progressive organ failure. Without regular treatments, using genetic stabilizers stored in royal vaults, she would die within a year. She needs access to the same technology base that created 904, genetic manipulation at the fundamental level. She has motive to be interested in evolutionary catalysts, to research potential cures for her condition. The princess is 16 years old by human reckoning, Shield Prime said coldly. She's ambitious, intelligent, and occasionally reckless, but I've protected her since birth. I would stake my life that she had no involvement in this conspiracy. You're emotionally compromised, I pointed out. A good investigator can't dismiss suspects based on personal loyalty. Then she released a long breath, her combat-ready stance relaxing incrementally. You're correct, she admitted. My feelings for the princess are irrelevant to the investigation. We will examine her involvement objectively, following evidence rather than intuition. But, Ambassador, understand this. If you accuse her falsely, or if you damage her reputation without cause, Crown security protocols or not, I will make you regret it. Fair enough, I said, respecting her honesty. Let's talk to the royal physician next. Shorath had legitimate access to the vault and the medical expertise to understand what 904 would do to a human subject. That makes him either a prime suspect or a valuable source of information about who else might have that knowledge. We found Royal Physician Shorath in his private laboratory, a facility that sprawled across 3 levels of the station's medical sector. He greeted us with the distracted politeness of someone deep in complex work, his multiple hands continuing to manipulate instruments even as he acknowledged our presence. Shield Prime, always a pleasure. And you must be Ambassador Reeves, or what remains of him. The Queen briefed me on your transformation. Fascinating outcome, though I deeply regret the circumstances that produced it. Did you know about 904 before this incident? I asked directly. Shorath's hands stilled. Of course. I'm Royal Physician. I maintain inventory of all medical compounds stored in Crown vaults, including historical items like the evolutionary catalyst. But I haven't accessed 904 itself in nearly 30 years. Its obsolete technology superseded by safer genetic modification techniques. Why maintain a stockpile of dangerous obsolete bioweapons? Because destroying genetic knowledge is anathema to proper scientific practice, Shorath replied sharply. We preserve these compounds for the same reason human archives maintain records of primitive medical procedures, to remember our mistakes, to study historical approaches, and to ensure we never repeat the same errors. 904 represents a dead end in evolutionary research, but it's still valuable as an object lesson in why certain paths should not be pursued. I circled his laboratory, my enhanced senses picking up traces of complex organic compounds in the air. You accessed Vault 773 recently to retrieve medications for Crown Princess Telmara. What specifically did you get? Genetic stabilizers, Series 4 through 9, he answered immediately. Standard treatment protocols for degradation syndrome. Nothing related to evolutionary catalysts or adaptive compounds. I can provide you with detailed logs showing exactly what I removed and how it was administered. Do that, Shield Prime commanded, and prepare for a comprehensive audit of your entire medical operation. Every compound, every treatment, every research project. I want complete transparency. Shorth bristled at the implied accusation, but nodded. Of course, I have nothing to hide. But Shield Prime, if you're looking for whoever deployed 904 against the ambassador, you're searching in the wrong direction. The person you want isn't a medical researcher. There's someone with access to cutting-edge military biotech, specifically genetic mimicry systems. That narrows your suspect pool considerably. Explain, I said, leaning forward. The royal physician activated a holographic display showing DNA structures below. True genetic mimicry, the ability to completely replicate another organism's physical form at the cellular level, requires technology we officially don't possess. I've heard rumors of covert research programs exploring that capability, but they're supposedly theoretical only. To successfully impersonate Nurse Kithrala with enough fidelity to fool station biometrics, your conspirator would need access to operational mimicry systems that are at minimum a decade beyond what I can produce in this laboratory. Who would have access to theoretical military biotech? Shield Prime demanded. Shorth gestured to his displays with 3 hands simultaneously, a shrug that encompassed his whole body. Minister of Science Kevroth oversees all classified research, so he'd know if such programs existed. The Queen herself, obviously. Crown Princess Telmara technically has clearance for military briefings as heir apparent, though her actual access is limited by her age and the Queen's discretion, and potentially the High Council members who approve black budget allocations, though they often don't know specific project details. We left Shorth's laboratory with more questions than answers. Back in the Crown Security Operations Center, Shield Prime pulled up files in the High Council. 17 Valkyrie nobles who advised the Queen on matters of state and controlled significant portions of the Concord's economy and military. If this conspiracy extends into the High Council, our problems are far worse than we thought, she said grimly. Individual nobles commanding private security forces, controlling trade networks, maintaining intelligence assets. They have resources to rival the Crown itself. I studied the council members' files, but my attention kept returning to Minister Kevroth. Something about his profile bothered me, a detail that my enhanced perception kept flagging as significant. Then I saw it. His research portfolio. 17 different projects across multiple fields. That's unusual, isn't it? Most scientists specialize. Shield Prime pulled up comparative data. Extremely unusual. Most ministers of science focus on 3 to 5 major initiatives. Kevroth's breadth of involvement is unprecedented in recent history. What if that breadth is intentional? I proposed. What if he's using legitimate research projects as cover for something classified? 17 different initiatives means 17 different budgets, 17 different teams, 17 different facilities where he could hide a covert program. We dove deeper into Kevroth's research network, tracking funding flows and personnel assignments. It took 4 more hours of intensive analysis, but eventually we found the anomaly, a materials science project ostensibly focused on advanced hull composites that had consumed twice its allocated budget over the past 3 years. Where did the excess funding go? I asked. Shield Prime traced the financial records, her expression darkening with each revelation. Experimental biological materials, genetic sequencing equipment. Containment systems rated for biohazard level 7, the highest classification. Ambassador, this looks exactly like the kind of infrastructure you'd need to weaponize genetic mimicry technology. Can we access the facility? I asked. Not without alerting Kevroth, she admitted. It's in a private sector of the station, protected by his ministerial security clearances. If we attempt entry without proper authorization, he'll know immediately. Then we get authorization, I said, from the Queen herself. She gave us full investigative authority. Let's use it. Queen Velshara authorized the raid within minutes of reviewing our findings. 2 hours later, Shield Prime assembled a tactical team of 12 Crown Guards, and we descended on Minister Kevroth's hidden laboratory like a hammer strike. We found it empty. Not just evacuated, scrubbed clean, with the thoroughness of people who'd had hours of warning. The biological materials were gone, the genetic sequencers wiped of all data, the containment systems deactivated and purged. Whatever evidence had existed here had been systematically destroyed. Someone warned him, Shield Prime said, her voice tight with controlled fury. Someone with access to our investigation fed him our findings before we could act. In the far corner, behind where a large piece of equipment had once stood, I found a single scale. Velcari dermal plating shed naturally during growth cycles. I picked it up carefully, examining it with vision that could resolve cellular details. This isn't Kevroth's scale. The color variation is wrong, and the thickness suggests someone younger. Much younger. Shield Prime took the scale and ran it through a portable genetic scanner. Her eyes went dark with shock and betrayal. "Crown Princess Talmara," she whispered. "This scale belongs to the princess." If the heir to the Velcari throne was involved in this conspiracy, if she'd helped weaponize genetic research and deploy it against a human diplomat, the implications would destroy far more than just the alliance between our species. I looked at Shield Prime and saw the same terrible understanding reflected in her eyes. We'd found our conspirators. Now we had to decide what to do about them, knowing that the truth could topple a crown and plunge two civilizations into chaos. The evidence was circumstantial but damning. The princess's genetic material in a secret laboratory, her medical condition giving her motive to research genetic manipulation, her clearance level granting access to classified military projects. But we had no proof of direct involvement, no communication records or witness testimony that would stand up to scrutiny. "We need to confront her," I said, "directly, without warning, before anyone else can sanitize more evidence." Shield Prime's conflict was visible in every line of her posture. If we're wrong, if there's an innocent explanation, we'll have traumatized a 16-year-old who's already facing a terminal diagnosis. That's not something I can easily forgive myself for. And if we're right, I countered, every hour we delay gives her and Kevroth more time to cover their tracks. Someone used me as a weapon against peace. They killed Nurse Cathrala, and were willing to let me die or go mad in the process. That person needs to face consequences, regardless of their age or position. Shield Prime made her decision with visible effort. We'll approach the princess together, in the Queen's presence. This is too important to handle without Crown oversight. If Talmara is involved, her mother deserves to hear it directly. We found Queen Velshara and Crown Princess Talmara together in the royal residential wing, sharing what appeared to be a private meal. The domestic scene, a mother and daughter eating together discussing mundane matters, made what came next even more painful. The Queen saw our expressions and immediately dismissed her attendants. "Shield Prime, Ambassador Reeves, your faces tell me you found something terrible. Speak." I placed the scale on the table between them. "We found this in Minister Kevroth's secret laboratory. Genetic analysis confirms it belongs to Crown Princess Talmara. We need an explanation for how it got there." The princess stared at the scale, her young face cycling through shock, fear, and something that might have been guilt. Then she looked at her mother, and I saw tears gathering at the edges of her compound eyes. "I'm sorry," Talmara whispered. "Mother, I'm so sorry. I never meant for anyone to get hurt." Her regal composure cracked, revealing raw maternal anguish beneath. "Talmara, what did you do?" "I was dying," the princess said, her voice breaking. The genetic stabilizers were working less and less. Physician Shorath said I had maybe 2 years left, probably less. I was desperate. When Kevroth approached me with his research, with the possibility of using evolutionary catalyst technology to cure degradation syndrome, I thought it was a miracle. "You helped him access the royal vaults," Shield Prime said, her professional detachment barely masking devastation. "You gave him 904. "Not directly," Talmara protested. "I just provided my medical authorization codes when he asked. He said he needed them to retrieve research samples. I didn't know he was planning to test the catalyst on a living subject." I swear I didn't know about Ambassador Reeves until after it happened. The Queen stood abruptly, her multiple hands trembling with suppressed rage, or grief, or both. "And when you learned? When you discovered that an innocent human diplomat had been transformed against his will, that a nurse had been murdered, what did you do then?" Kevroth said we could still make it work, that if we just kept quiet, if we let the diplomatic process handle it as an accident, we could continue the research. He said we were close to a cure, that just a few more months would... Silence. the Queen commanded, her voice carrying harmonics that made the walls vibrate. You chose your potential survival over justice. You became complicit in conspiracy and murder because you were afraid to die. That is not how I raised you. That is not who I thought you were. My mama collapsed into her chair, her entire body shaken with sobs. I'm 16 years old and dying, Mother. I was scared. I made terrible choices because I was scared and I wanted to live. Does that make me irredeemable? The question hung in the air, and I felt the full weight of my own complicity in this moment. I'd agreed to the Queen's cover-up, chosen to hide the truth from my own government, all in the name of preserving peace. Now that same cover-up was shielding a conspiracy that reached into the royal family itself. Where is Minister Kevroth now? I asked, cutting through the family drama with the sharp edge of necessity. If we're having this conversation, he's already fled or prepared to flee. All of Kevroth's known locations are empty. His personal shuttle launched from the station 40 minutes ago, heading toward the edge of Valkyrie space. We can intercept, but it will require the Queen's direct authorization to deploy military assets. Queen Velishara looked at her daughter, then at me, her eyes holding the exhaustion of someone who'd aged a century in a single conversation. Ambassador Reeves, you've seen the truth now. My daughter, my own heir, betrayed everything I've tried to build. The alliance between our species was nearly destroyed by royal conspiracy. I promise you justice within a year. I'm prepared to deliver it immediately. But I need to know, do you still believe in the path we chose? Or should I activate full disclosure protocols and let both our civilizations deal with the consequences? I thought about the burning transformation I'd endured, the humanity I'd lost, the future I could never have. I thought about Nurse Kathrala, murdered and worn like a costume by someone pursuing their own agenda. I thought about the fragile peace between Earth and the Valkyrie Concord, built on decades of patient diplomacy and threatened by a conspiracy born from desperation and ambition. Intercept Kevroth, I said finally. Bring him back alive. The princess stays here, under guard, until we understand the full extent of her involvement. And Your Majesty, you're going to explain to your daughter exactly what Crown law demands as punishment for conspiracy and treason. She chose this path. She should understand where it leads. The Queen nodded slowly. Shield Prime, deploy interceptors. I want Kevroth alive and intact for questioning. Use whatever force is necessary, but bring him back. As Shield Prime coordinated the military response, I watched Crown Princess Telmara realize that her desperate gamble for survival had instead accelerated her journey toward death. The genetic dissolution that awaited convicted traitors would unmake her far more completely than degradation syndrome ever could. But I also saw a terrified child who'd made catastrophic choices while facing her own mortality. The anger I felt toward her was real, but so was the understanding that she'd been manipulated by someone far more experienced in betrayal. How much of this was Kevroth's manipulation? I asked Telmara directly. When did he first approach you? She wiped at her eyes, struggling to compose herself. 14 months ago. He came to me after a particularly bad degradation episode when I'd collapsed during the public ceremony. He said he'd been researching potential cures using classified technologies, that he just needed access to certain materials. He made it sound like I was helping with legitimate medical research. And when did you realize it wasn't legitimate? Shield Prime demanded. Not until 2 days ago when Mother told me about the investigation, Telmara admitted. That's when Kevroth contacted me privately, explained that you'd found evidence, that I needed to help him evacuate his laboratory or we'd both be caught. I was afraid, so I warned him. I helped him destroy evidence. I became the criminal he'd always planned for me to be. Shield Prime listened to the report, her expression hardening. Interceptors have engaged Kevroth's shuttle. He's refusing to surrender and attempting to reach the hyperspace threshold. If he jumps before we can disable his engines, we'll lose him. Can they stop him? The Queen asked. They're trying, deploying electromagnetic nets and focused pulse weapons. But, Ambassador, you should know, Kevroth is transmitting a message, broadcasting it on all frequencies. He's claiming that Crown Princess Telmara was the mastermind behind the conspiracy, that he was just following her orders as a loyal minister serving the royal family. That's a lie. He approached me. He planned everything. It doesn't matter what's true, I said grimly. What matters is what people believe. If Kevroth escapes and that message spreads, the princess will be tried in the court of public opinion long before any formal investigation concludes. Her reputation will be destroyed regardless of the facts. Queen Velishara moved to the communication panel, her voice cutting across all channels with the authority of absolute command. All Velkari forces, this is Queen Velshara. Minister Kevroth is to be taken alive at any cost. Disable his ship, board if necessary, but bring him back. That is a direct royal order. The response came seconds later. Your Majesty, we have weapons lock. Firing. The communication cut to static, then nothing. Shield Prime worked frantically to re-establish contact. When the channel finally cleared, the interceptor pilot's voice was shaken. Your Majesty, Kevroth's shuttle just self-destructed. Complete vaporization. There's nothing left to recover. The silence that followed was absolute. Our primary suspect had chosen death over capture. Taking all direct evidence of the conspiracy with him, we were left with a traumatized princess, circumstantial evidence, and a cover-up that was rapidly becoming more complicated than the original crime. He killed himself rather than face Crown Justice, Shield Prime said quietly. That's an admission of guilt, but it also means we'll never know the full extent of his conspiracy or whether he had other accomplices. I looked at Crown Princess Telmara and saw her future collapsing. Without Kevroth to contradict her story, she'd be the sole target of investigation and blame. Her involvement was undeniable, but the question of whether she was a co-conspirator or a manipulated victim would determine whether she faced execution or exile. Your Majesty, I said carefully, we need to make a decision about how to proceed. We have 3 options. First, full disclosure, reveal everything to Earth and the Concord, let the investigation proceed publicly. The princess will be tried for conspiracy, likely convicted based on available evidence, and sentenced to genetic dissolution. The alliance between our species will survive, but barely, and your dynasty will be tainted by scandal. Queen Velshara listened without interruption. Her regal composure restored, though I could see the cost it demanded. Second option, I continued, selective disclosure. We admit the injection was deliberate sabotage, but attribute it solely to Minister Kevroth, a rogue actor now deceased. The princess's involvement remains classified, known only to those in this room. The alliance survives, your dynasty's reputation is protected, but we're all complicit in hiding the full truth. And the third option? She asked. We maintain the original cover-up, but modify the princess's role going forward. She doesn't face Crown Justice for conspiracy, but she publicly renounces her claim to the throne. She dedicates her remaining life, however long the degradation syndrome allows, to making amends. Working with me on human Velkari integration, using her position to strengthen the alliance she nearly destroyed. It's not traditional justice, but it might be more effective. Shield Prime started to object, but the Queen raised a hand for silence. The third option makes Ambassador Reeves and myself the ultimate arbiters of justice in this matter. That's a tremendous concentration of power with no oversight or accountability. It violates every principle of rule of law our civilization is built on. But it's also the option most likely to preserve peace while still extracting meaningful consequences from the guilty parties. The princess loses her future as queen, dedicates herself to repairing the damage she helped cause, and lives with the knowledge of what she's done. That might be more effective than genetic dissolution. Madame Mara looked up at that hope and horror mixed in her expression. You would spare me Crown Justice after what I've done? I would spare you the specific punishment of genetic dissolution, I clarified. You'd still face significant consequences. Loss of your crown inheritance, mandatory service in human Valkyrie relations, constant oversight and the burden of knowing that your actions caused deaths and nearly destroyed an alliance. And if you fail to meet the conditions we set, or if evidence emerges of additional crimes, traditional crown justice would still apply. This isn't mercy. It's a different kind of punishment. The Queen studied me with an intensity that suggested she was seeing me clearly for the first time. You've changed, Ambassador, not just physically. You think like someone who's seen too much darkness too quickly. Like someone who's been forced to make impossible choices and learn to live with them. Your conspiracy transformed me into something between human and Velkari, I said. Maybe that gives me a unique perspective on justice that exists between our two legal systems. I don't know if what I'm proposing is right. I just know that ending the princess's life won't bring back Nurse Cathrala, won't undo my transformation, and won't prevent future conspiracies. But forcing her to spend her remaining time actively working to repair the damage might accomplish something meaningful. Shield Prime spoke up, her voice carrying the weight of lifelong service. Your Majesty, if you choose this path, I must formally object. Crown law exists for reasons. Allowing royal privilege to shield the princess from proper consequences sets a dangerous precedent. Noted and recorded, the Queen said. But Shield Prime, Traditional Crown Justice was designed for a universe where the Velkhari Concord stood alone. We now exist in a complex web of alliances with dozens of species, each with their own concepts of law and punishment. Perhaps it's time our justice evolved to match that reality. She turned to her daughter, and the love and disappointment in that gaze was painful to witness. Talmara, if I accept Ambassador Reeves's proposal, you will renounce all claims to the throne immediately. You will serve under his direct supervision as a junior advisor on human Velkhari integration. Every action you take, every decision you make, will be scrutinized and judged. You will have no privacy, no autonomy, and no forgiveness if you fail. This is not a lighter sentence than genetic dissolution. It's a slower, harder death of everything you thought you'd become. Do you accept these terms? The princess looked at each of us in turn. Her mother, Shield Prime, and finally me, the transformed human whose life she'd helped destroy. I saw her measuring the weight of the choice, understanding what we were offering was both salvation and damnation. I accept, she said quietly. I'll spend whatever time the degradation syndrome leaves me trying to make things right. It won't be enough. I know that, but it's more than I deserve. Queen Velshara nodded slowly, her decision made. Then it's settled. Shield Prime, draft the necessary documents. The Crown Princess renounces her inheritance effective immediately. We'll announce it as a medical decision related to her deteriorating condition, which is true in its way. Minister Kevroth will be reported as having died in an accident while fleeing arrest for unauthorized research violations. Ambassador Reeves's transformation will remain classified, known only to essential personnel. We still don't know if Kevroth had other accomplices or what his ultimate goal was beyond curing the princess's condition. The investigation continues. The Queen said firmly, "You and Shield Prime will have unlimited resources to pursue any remaining leads. If you find additional conspirators, they will face full Crown justice without political interference. The princess's special treatment is contingent on her being a manipulated victim rather than an active co-conspirator. If evidence suggests otherwise, our agreement is void." She stood, her royal authority reasserting itself after the emotional devastation of the last hour. "Ambassador Reeves, you came to this station as a junior diplomatic attaché representing a species we barely understood. Now you're something new, a bridge between our peoples. Whether you wanted that role or not, the path ahead will be difficult for both of us, but perhaps that's appropriate. We've both been transformed by this crisis. Let's ensure those transformations serve peace rather than undermining it." I looked at my hands, still processing the reality of what I'd become and what I'd chosen. A hybrid creature neither human nor Velkhari, complicit in a cover-up that violated everything I'd been taught about transparency and justice, working alongside a disgraced princess who'd helped make me this way. "I'll need to contact my government," I said. "Tell them I'm accepting a new position within the Velkhari royal household, that I've chosen to remain on the station rather than return to Earth. They'll ask questions. Tell them the truth," the Queen suggested, "or as much of it as you can. That you formed relationships here, found opportunities for service that appeal to you, decided to extend your posting indefinitely. It's not a complete lie. You have formed relationships, however complicated, and you are serving a purpose even if the details must remain classified." Crown Princess Talmara spoke up hesitantly. "Ambassador Reeves, I know apologies are meaningless given what I've done to you, but I want you to understand, when Kevroth first told me about using 904 on a human subject, I said no. I told him it was too dangerous, too cruel. He convinced me that you'd volunteered, that you'd agreed to experimental treatment in exchange for enhanced capabilities. I believed him because I wanted to believe the research could continue without causing harm. That makes me complicit in his lies, but I need you to know I never wanted you to suffer. Whether you wanted it or not, I did suffer," I said bluntly. "I lost my humanity, my future, my connection to my own species. Those are the facts. Your intentions, however genuine, don't change them. But if you're sincere about making amends, you'll have plenty of opportunities to prove it. Starting now." Shield Prime and I continued investigating Kevroth's network, interviewing his research staff, analyzing every scrap of data that survived his laboratory purge. We found evidence of other experiments, genetic modifications tested on volunteer subjects, adaptive technology research that pushed legal boundaries, but nothing conclusively linking him to additional conspirators. Crown Princess Talmara worked beside us, stripped of her royal privileges but granted enough access to be useful. She had an intuitive understanding of Velkhari politics and social structures that helped us identify potential connections we would have missed. Slowly, grudgingly, I began to see her as more than just the architect of my transformation. She was also a dying child who'd made catastrophic choices under pressure from someone far more experienced in manipulation. 2 months into the investigation, we found something unexpected. Hidden in Kevroth's encrypted personal files, buried beneath layers of security that took SHIELD Prime weeks to crack, was a communication log showing regular contact with an Earth-based organization. The Humanity First Coalition, a human political group that opposed alien integration, advocated for Earth isolationism, and believed interspecies alliances made humanity vulnerable to exploitation. They were funding him, I said, reading through the financial records with growing horror. This entire conspiracy wasn't just about curing the princess's condition. Kevroth was working with human extremists to destabilize the alliance from both sides. They wanted to create an incident that would justify Earth's withdrawal from interstellar cooperation. SHIELD Prime studied the evidence with the methodical precision I'd come to respect. The timing makes sense. If a human diplomat was transformed by Velkhari bioweapons and the incident became public, the Humanity First Coalition could use it to argue that aliens were dangerous, that integration threatened human genetic purity. They'd have their perfect propaganda tool. And Telmara was just a convenient excuse, I realized. Kevroth would have found another way to access 904 if she hadn't provided her authorization codes. She wasn't the mastermind. She was another victim, or at least a secondary participant, in a much larger conspiracy. We took the evidence to Queen Valshara, who reviewed it with the same exhausted gravity that had become her constant demeanor since her daughter's involvement came to light. "This changes everything," she said quietly. "If we expose the Humanity First Coalition's involvement, we prove that the conspiracy extended to Earth itself. That should mitigate some of the diplomatic damage and demonstrate this wasn't purely a Velkhari failure, but it will also create a domestic crisis for Earth's government." "They need to know," I insisted. "If Earth has internal factions actively sabotaging interstellar relations, that's a threat to both our species. Silence protects the conspirators and allows them to try again." The Queen nodded slowly. "Agreed. But we need to coordinate the disclosure carefully. Work with your Earth contacts, explain what we've found, and let human authorities handle their internal extremists while we manage our side. This investigation is finally producing the kind of justice that serves everyone, accountability for all guilty parties, regardless of species or political affiliation." I contacted my supervisor at Earth's Diplomatic Corps, a careful conversation that revealed just enough to trigger proper investigation protocols. Within days, Earth security services were raiding Humanity First Coalition facilities, arresting leaders, and unraveling a conspiracy that had apparently been growing for years. The scandal broke simultaneously on both worlds. Minister Kevroth's death and his role in destabilizing the alliance, the Humanity First Coalition's funding and coordination of anti-alien extremism, the bioweapon deployment that transformed a human diplomat. What we didn't reveal, Crown Princess Telmara's involvement, the specific details of my transformation, or the cover-up Queen Velshara and I had orchestrated, those secrets stayed buried, known only to the handful of people in the room when decisions were made. The alliance survived. Barely. Public outrage on both worlds demanded accountability, but with the primary conspirators dead or arrested, the anger had clear targets. Human and Velkhari governments launched joint investigations, implemented new oversight protocols, and strengthened the very alliance the conspiracy had tried to destroy. And through it all, I worked alongside Crown Princess Telmara, teaching her about human psychology and culture while learning Velkhari political intricacies from her. We were an unlikely team, the transformed diplomat and the disgraced heir, but effective in ways neither of us expected. 1 year after the injection that changed everything, I stood in the same medical bay where my transformation had begun. Royal Physician Shorath was running diagnostics on my hybrid physiology, recording data that would help him understand the long-term effects of 904 exposure. "Remarkable," he muttered, reviewing the scans. "Your genetic structure has remained stable since the anchor was applied. No degradation, no adverse mutations, no rejection reactions between your human and Velkhari components. You're a biological miracle, Ambassador, and proof that our species are more compatible than we ever imagined." "Compatibility through forced transformation," I said dryly. "Not exactly the ideal model for integration, but meaningful nonetheless. The data we're gathering from your condition has applications for Princess Telmara's treatment. Not a cure, but techniques that could extend her life significantly. She may have years rather than months remaining." That news should have pleased me. Instead, it just felt like another complication in an already impossibly complex situation. Telmara and I had developed a working relationship built on mutual guilt and reluctant respect. Extending that relationship for years meant prolonging the constant reminder of what had been done to us both, but it also meant more time to make genuine amends, to build something meaningful from the wreckage of conspiracy and betrayal. I found Telmara in one of the observation lounges, staring out at the stars with the contemplative stillness that had replaced her youthful energy. The degradation syndrome was taking its toll despite the treatments, aging her faster than natural time would. "Shorath says you might have years," I said, joining her at the viewport. She didn't look away from the stars. "Does that make you happy or sad, Ambassador?" "Sad? I honestly don't know anymore. Everything about this situation is too complicated for simple emotions." "I'm glad," she said quietly. "Glad I have more time. Not because I fear death. I've made peace with that inevitability, but because I haven't finished making amends yet. The work we're doing, the integration programs, the cultural exchange initiatives, it matters. I want to see it succeed before I'm gone." I studied her reflection in the viewport, seeing past the failing biology to the determination beneath. "You've changed. When we first confronted you, you were terrified, desperate. Now you seem almost at peace." "Acceptance," she corrected. "Not peace. I accept that I made terrible choices, that people died because of my weakness, that I'll never be queen. I accept that whatever time I have left belongs to repairing the damage I helped cause. That's not peace. It's just clarity about what my life means now." We stood in comfortable silence, watching ships arrive and depart from the station's docking facilities. Each vessel represented connections between species, trade and diplomacy, and cultural exchange that wouldn't exist without the alliance we'd almost destroyed. "Ambassador Reeves," Telmara said eventually, "I need to tell you something. The genetic degradation, Physician Shorath, is too optimistic. I can feel it accelerating, despite the treatments. I don't have years. I have months, maybe a year if I'm fortunate. And I need to know, when I'm gone, will you continue this work? Will you keep building bridges between our species?" The question held more weight than its simple phrasing suggested. She was asking whether the integration programs would survive her death, whether her remaining time had meaning beyond her own need for redemption. "Yes," I said simply. "Not because you asked, but because it's become my purpose too. I'm not human anymore, not fully. And I'm not Velkhari either. That makes me uniquely suited to exist between our species, to understand both perspectives and translate them for each other. It's not the life I chose, but it's the one I have. I might as well make it mean something." She smiled, the first genuine expression of happiness I'd seen from her in months. "Thank you. That helps more than you know." 6 months later, Crown Princess Telmara collapsed during a public appearance, her genetic degradation finally overwhelming the treatments that had sustained her. She died 3 days afterwards, surrounded by her mother, Shield Prime, and me. Her last words were an apology, not to me specifically, but to everyone whose lives her choices had impacted. Queen Velshara held her daughter as the light faded from her compound eyes, and I witnessed grief that transcended species and politics and all the complicated history between us. We buried Telmara with full royal honors despite her renunciation of crown inheritance. The funeral brought together representatives from dozens of species, all acknowledging the princess who'd nearly destroyed the alliance and then spent her final year trying to rebuild it. I spoke at the ceremony using my hybrid voice to deliver words in both human and Velkhari languages simultaneously. I talked about redemption and second chances, about how the worst mistakes could become opportunities for growth if we had the courage to face them honestly. I didn't mention the conspiracy directly. That remained classified, known only to those who needed to know. But I honored Telmara's memory by acknowledging that she'd made profound mistakes and dedicated her final months to making amends. After the funeral, Queen Velshara approached me privately. "Ambassador, I wanted to thank you for what you said, for not exposing everything, even now when Telmara can no longer face consequences. The truth would serve no purpose except satisfying anger," I said. "She's gone. The conspiracy is ended. The alliance survives. Sometimes that's the best justice we can achieve. Not perfect, but functional." "You've become wise beyond your years," the Queen observed, "or perhaps beyond your species. The transformation gave you more than just physical changes. It gave me perspective," I agreed. "The ability to see situations from multiple viewpoints simultaneously. Sometimes that's a gift. Often it's just exhausting." She studied me with the same intensity she'd shown during our first confrontation over the conspiracy. "What will you do now? You've fulfilled your commitment to me. Found the conspirators, maintained the cover-up, worked with Telmara until her death. You're free to return to Earth if you choose, or to remain here and continue your work. The choice is yours. I looked out at the station, at the thousands of beings from hundreds of species living and working together in relative peace. This place had become my home in ways Earth could never be again, not because I loved it more, but because my transformed body simply fit here better. "I'll stay," I said. "There's still work to do. Integration programs to develop, cultural misunderstandings to mediate, future conspiracies to prevent. Someone needs to stand between our species and translate not just languages, but intentions. I might as well be that someone." Queen Velshara nodded, accepting my decision with visible relief. "Then I officially appoint you as senior advisor on human Valkyrie integration, with full diplomatic credentials and authority to speak on behalf of the Crown in matters concerning Earth relations. It's a significant promotion from junior attaché. Earned through the worst possible circumstances," I observed. "But I'll accept it, on one condition, which is, if another conspiracy emerges, if someone else tries to weaponize our alliance or use science against peace, we handle it openly. No more cover-ups, no more classified medical chambers and secret decisions. Telmara's death bought us that privilege, the ability to admit we made mistakes and survive them. We don't waste that gift by repeating the same patterns." "Agreed," the Queen said solemnly. "Transparency moving forward, even when it's painful. Even when it threatens political stability. We owe that much to everyone who was damaged by our choices." We formalized the agreement that day, creating new protocols for interspecies cooperation and crisis management. The policies we implemented became templates for dozens of other alliances, proof that it was possible to build trust even after profound betrayal. Years passed. The alliance between Earth and the Valkyrie Concord strengthened into something resilient, tested by crisis and tempered by honest acknowledgement of failure. I worked with delegates from both species, mediating disputes, facilitating understanding, and occasionally preventing smaller conspiracies before they could grow into existential threats. I never returned to Earth. My transformed body made long-term residence impossible, despite medical advances that could have sustained me temporarily. But I maintained relationships with human diplomats and scholars, served as a bridge between species, and built a life that had meaning even if it wasn't the one I'd originally planned. On the 10-year anniversary of my transformation, I stood in the same observation lounge where Telmara and I had our final meaningful conversation. The station had expanded, grown to accommodate new species joining the Alliance, and new programs fostering cooperation. Shield Prime joined me, now promoted to Chief of Crown Security after a decade of exemplary service. "Ambassador Reeves, the Queen wants to see you. She says it's important." I followed her to the royal chambers, wondering what crisis had emerged now, but when I arrived, I found Queen Velishara standing beside a memorial. A new installation honoring those who died protecting the Alliance. Nurse Kathrala's name was carved there, along with Crown Princess Telmara's and dozens of others who'd given their lives in various ways to maintain peace. "I wanted you to see this before the public unveiling tomorrow," the Queen said, "and to ask whether your name should be here as well. You didn't die in the conspiracy, but the human you were ceased to exist. That deserves acknowledgement. No, my name doesn't belong on a memorial for the dead. I'm still here, still working, still serving a purpose. This monument honors those who can't continue their work. I can. That makes all the difference." "Fair enough," she said. "Though I want you to know, the transformation you endured, the humanity you lost, that sacrifice made everything else possible. Without you choosing to accept my cover-up, without Telmara's redemption arc, without the work you've done bridging our species, this alliance would have failed. The memorial doesn't need your name to honor your contribution. The living peace between our peoples does that better than any monument could." I stood before the memorial, reading the names of those who'd fallen, and felt the weight of everything we'd built from their sacrifice. It wasn't perfect justice. It wasn't complete truth, but it was real peace, hard-won and carefully maintained, and that had to be enough. The alien nurse gave me the wrong injection. The alien queen covered it up. But from that terrible beginning, we built something worth protecting. And I would spend whatever remained of my hybrid existence ensuring it survived. Because sometimes the worst mistakes become the foundation for the greatest achievements. And sometimes the transformation we never wanted becomes exactly what the universe needed. The memorial stood silent in the starlight, bearing witness to all we'd lost and all we'd saved. And I stood with it, a living bridge between species, neither fully human nor truly Valkyrie, but perfectly suited for the space between. That space, that uncomfortable, complicated, necessary space between species and cultures and truths, That was where real peace lived, and I had become its guardian, transformed by conspiracy into exactly the person who could protect it. The universe had a strange sense of irony, but I'd learned to live with it, one hybrid heartbeat at a time.